What would you do if the biggest night of your career and the darkest night of your life happened at exactly the same time? Pause. Now imagine this. You're the heavyweight champion of the world. You've beaten legends. You've made history. And then one morning, you wake up and your entire country is under attack. Bombs, tanks, soldiers crossing your border. Your wife, your kids, your parents, all of them in danger. Most champions in that moment would call their agent, call their promoter, figure out how to protect their next fight, their next paycheck, their legacy. Oleksandr Usyk picked up a rifle. Pause. This is the story of a man who is, by almost every measurement, one of the greatest boxers alive today. Two-time undisputed heavyweight champion, undefeated, a resume most fighters can only dream of. But underneath all of that, there's a story most fans never really stop to think about. A story about a man who has spent years fighting two different battles at the exact same time, one inside a boxing ring in front of millions of cheering fans, and one far away inside his own heart for a country that's still at war. This is the untold sacrifice of Oleksandr Usyk, the making of a champion. Oleksandr Usyk was born and raised in Ukraine, and long before he ever became a professional boxer, he was already one of the most decorated amateur fighters the sport had ever seen. In 2012, at the London Olympics, Usyk won gold at super heavyweight, representing his country on the biggest amateur stage in the world. That's already a massive accomplishment on its own. But what makes Usyk different from a lot of Olympic gold medalists who turn pro is what he did next. He didn't just become good at the professional level, he became historically great. Pause. As a cruiserweight, in a division that at the time was considered one of the deepest and most talented in the entire sport, Usyk did something almost no one manages to do. He beat every single unbeaten champion in his weight class. He fought his way through a tournament called the World Boxing Super Series, took out fighters like Mairis Briedis and Murat Gassiev, and became the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world. Every belt, no arguments. Most fighters would look at that accomplishment and be satisfied for the rest of their careers. Undisputed champion, one single division, conquered completely. Usyk looked at it and decided it wasn't enough. In 2019, he made the jump up to heavyweight, and if you know anything about boxing, you know that's an enormous risk. Heavyweight is the glamour division, sure, but it's also full of massive, powerful men, often 4 or 5 inches taller than Usyk, and 50, 60, sometimes 70 pounds heavier. Moving up to fight those men, as a smaller, naturally leaner fighter, is one of the boldest gambles you can make in this sport. People doubted him. They said his style, his footwork, his boxing IQ wouldn't be enough against the sheer size and power of true heavyweights. They were wrong. Pause. Usyk beat Anthony Joshua, one of the biggest stars in the sport, not once, but twice. He later stopped Daniel Dubois, another massive puncher, and beat him again in a rematch years later. He eventually faced Tyson Fury, arguably the most skilled heavyweight of his generation, and beat him too, twice, becoming a 2-time undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Think about that resume for a second. 2 different weight classes, undisputed in both, beating some of the biggest names the sport has ever produced. By almost any measure, Oleksandr Usyk belongs in the conversation for one of the greatest boxers of this entire era. But here's what most highlight reels never show you. While all of this was happening, while Usyk was building one of the most incredible careers in modern boxing, his home country was under siege. And at one point, in the middle of it all, he made a decision that had absolutely nothing to do the morning everything changed. In February of 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Tanks crossing borders, missiles hitting cities, families running for shelter in basements and subway stations. It was the kind of moment that changes a country forever in a single day. Oleksandr Usyk, at that exact time, was one of the most famous athletes in the entire world. A heavyweight champion, a man with money, connections, opportunities to be almost anywhere on earth he wanted to be. He was in Ukraine, and instead of leaving, instead of flying somewhere safe and simply issuing a statement of support from a distance, Usyk joined a territorial defense battalion. Pause. Let that actually sink in. A world champion boxer, someone whose hands are quite literally insured for millions of dollars, someone whose entire career and livelihood depends on those hands staying healthy and uninjured, picked up a rifle and prepared to defend his country alongside regular citizens, soldiers and volunteers. He wasn't the only boxer to do this either. His longtime friend, the Olympic and world champion Vasily Lomachenko, also joined a defense battalion around the same time. Boxing legends Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko, the mayor of Kyiv, and his brother also stepped up to defend their country in whatever way they could. But Usyk's decision hit differently because of exactly where he was in his career. He wasn't some retired legend with nothing left to lose. He was an active, undefeated heavyweight champion, sitting right at the peak of his powers, with massive fights and massive paydays waiting for him. And in the middle of all of that, he posted a message online addressing Russian President Vladimir Putin directly. He wrote about how families, children, wives, grandmothers were hiding in basements. He begged for the war to stop. He said, simply and directly, "No war." This wasn't some polished PR-approved statement written by a PR team. This was a man, in real time, watching his country come under attack, using the only platform he had to beg for it to end. Now here's where the story takes a turn that a lot of fans don't fully realize, because Usyk didn't stay in that defense battalion for the rest of the war. Eventually, he went back to boxing. Pause. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because on the surface, that might sound like he simply changed his mind, or that boxing mattered more to him than the fight for his country. But the real reason is so much more complicated, and honestly, so much more emotional than that. The weight of 2 battles Usyk eventually returned to training and fighting, and he went on to defend and unify his heavyweight titles even further. But make no mistake, this wasn't a man who simply moved on and forgot about what was happening back home. Every single time Usyk has stepped into a boxing ring since that invasion began, he has carried something that almost no other fighter in the sport has to carry. The knowledge that, while he is under bright lights, in front of cheering crowds, fighting for a championship belt, his family, his friends, his entire country are living through an active war. Think about what that actually does to a person's mind. Most elite athletes talk about the pressure of a big fight, the nerves, the weight of expectation from fans and promoters. That's already an enormous mental burden for any human being to carry into a ring with them. Now add this. Somewhere back home, air raid sirens might be going off while you're doing your final training session. Somewhere back home, people you love could be in danger. At the exact same moment, you're expected to smile for cameras and talk about your excitement for an upcoming fight. Usyk has spoken about this openly. After one of his biggest fights, he made it clear that even in his moments of victory, his mind never fully leaves Ukraine. That every fight night comes bundled with the knowledge that the people he loves most are living through a reality most of us, thankfully, will never have to understand. He has consistently used his platform, fight after fight, to talk about the suffering in his homeland and to represent the strength and resilience of the Ukrainian people on one of the biggest stages in the world, the World Heavyweight Championship. Some fighters carry belts into the ring. Usyk carries an entire country. Pause. And that brings us to a moment in his career that a lot of fans might not fully connect back to everything we've just talked about. A moment that, when you understand the full context, becomes so much more meaningful than it looked on the surface. The pyramids and the breaking point. In May of 2026, Usyk took on a fight that honestly surprised a lot of people. Not another traditional heavyweight boxer, but Rico Verhoeven, a legendary kickboxing champion making his boxing debut in an event held at one of the most historic locations on planet Earth, the Pyramids of Giza in Egypt. It was framed as a spectacle, a crossover event, boxing history being made at one of the most ancient, iconic backdrops imaginable. And by that point in his career, Usyk was 39 years old, still undefeated. Still, in the eyes of most experts, one of the most technically gifted heavyweights the sport had ever produced. But something happened in that fight that shook a lot of people watching. Verhoeven, despite having essentially no professional boxing experience, gave Usyk one of the toughest, closest nights of his entire career. Usyk looked at times a step slower than the version of himself fans had watched dominate Joshua and Fury. It took a dramatic, controversial stoppage in the 11th round for Usyk to finally get the win and retain his title. Pause. For a man who had built his legacy on making the impossible look effortless, this was a rare glimpse of vulnerability. A reminder that even the greatest champions are still human, still aging, still capable of having a genuinely difficult night, and I think that's important context for what happened just about a month later. In late June of 2026, Usyk made a stunning announcement. He was voluntarily vacating all 3 of his remaining heavyweight titles, the WBC, WBA, and IBF belts, just giving them up on his own terms rather than being forced to relinquish them through some organizational mandate. He explained it simply. He wanted to make the belts available for the next generation of fighters coming up behind him. But he also made something very clear in that same announcement. He wasn't retiring, not yet. He said he still had one final chapter left to write. His words were, "I still have my last dance." Think about the timing of all of this. A fighter who once picked up a rifle to defend his homeland. A fighter who has spent years carrying the emotional weight of a war happening back home every single time he stepped into the ring. Now, at 39 years old, after one of the toughest nights of his career, voluntarily stepping away from the titles he spent over a decade building, to focus on writing his own ending, on his own terms. This is a man who has never let anyone else dictate the terms of his story, not opponents, not sanctioning bodies, not even, in the darkest moment imaginable, a full-scale invasion of his own country. What sacrifice really looks like. I want to slow down here for a second, because I think it's really easy to hear a story like this and just file it away as, wow, that's impressive, and move on to the next video. But think about what real sacrifice actually looks like in Usyk's story. It's not just the dramatic image of a champion joining a defense battalion, even though that alone is an incredibly powerful moment. Real sacrifice in his case is something much quieter, and honestly, much harder to sustain over years. It's every single training camp, knowing that news from home could turn devastating at any moment. It's every post-fight interview, choosing to use precious seconds of global attention, not to talk about his own greatness, but to remind the world that his people are still suffering. It's stepping into a ring, physically, mentally, and emotionally split between 2 completely different battles, and somehow still performing at a level that puts him in the conversation as one of the greatest heavyweights of his entire generation. Most champions only have to manage the pressure of boxing itself, the training, the weight cuts, the mental preparation for facing another dangerous man across the ring. Usyk has had to manage all of that, plus the reality of an ongoing war back home for years now, without ever fully being able to separate the two. And through all of it, he never lost. 25 wins, 0 losses. 2-time undisputed heavyweight champion, undisputed cruiserweight champion before that, an Olympic gold medalist before that. Pause. There's a version of this story where Usyk simply focuses on protecting his legacy, stays away from anything political or controversial, keeps his statements safe and neutral, the way a lot of athletes choose to do when their home country is going through something painful. That would have been the easier path, the safer path, career-wise. He didn't take it. He kept speaking. He kept representing Ukraine, not just with a flag draped over his shoulders after a win, but with real, tangible action when it actually mattered most. The champion who never stopped choosing his country. What I find most remarkable about Oleksandr Usyk's story is that he never had to choose just once. It wasn't a single dramatic decision made in the heat of one crisis that he could then move past and go back to being simply a boxer. He has had to keep choosing over and over, fight after fight, year after year. Choosing to speak up when it might have been easier to stay quiet. Choosing to represent his country's pain publicly, even while chasing his own personal greatness inside the ring. Choosing to carry that weight, fight after fight, without ever letting it fully break his focus or his undefeated record. And now, as he approaches what he's calling his last dance, stepping away from the titles he spent his entire career building, you have to wonder what's really driving that decision. Is it simply about legacy, about wanting to walk away on his own terms as a fighter? Or is it also, in some way, about finally allowing himself the space to just be a man, a husband, a father, a Ukrainian, without a heavyweight championship belt, demanding his attention at the exact same time his country still needs him? We may never fully know the private answer to that question. But what we do know is this. Oleksandr Usyk didn't just become one of the greatest boxers of his generation. He did it while carrying something almost no other champion in the sport's history has had to carry. A literal war, back home, the entire time. So the next time you watch highlights of Usyk beating Joshua or Fury, or standing tall after another incredible night as a champion, I want you to remember what was happening off camera. A man who once traded his boxing gloves for a rifle, not because he had to, but because his country needed him. A man who has fought every single fight since then, with the weight of an entire nation quietly sitting on his shoulders. Some champions fight for money. Some fight for legacy. Oleksandr Usyk has spent years fighting for both of those things, while also fighting every single day for the people back home who never had the choice to walk away. Pause. That, to me, is a kind of greatness that no championship belt could ever fully capture. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments what part of Usyk's journey hit you the hardest. And if you want more real, honest stories about the fighters behind the headlines, the sacrifices most fans never hear about, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next story.